Yvonne Muinde is the founder of IKWETA ARTS. She shares her experiences and knowledge as a matte painter and concept artist from her work at the best post-production VFX studios around the globe. Her visual effects career has spanned over 20 years, working on numerous iconic and award-winning film productions: The Hobbit, Avatar, Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Aquaman, Black Panther, Batman v Superman, Guardians of the Galaxy, Star Wars, Eragon, Happy Feet, The Lovely Bones. I could go on, but the list is endless. Yvonne is also a member of the Academy of Motion Pictures and the Visual Effects Society. In 2009, she and her team were awarded the VES Award for Outstanding Matte Painting in a Motion Picture for Avatar. And this is her story. What does it take for one to be a good visual effects artist, in your opinion?
To be a good visual effects artist, I think the foundation is always first in art, in the basics and traditional art, I would say, because even though we're using very technical or tools and computers and things that you would think are more technical, still the basis of everything we do is grounded in the foundation of what is art, basic art, composition, perspective, light, color. So having an understanding of basic art principles and art knowledge is probably, for me, a starting point. Then the second part to that is having an interest in it and wanting to do it. And then I think one of the things we have to be careful about with visual effects is it's a huge label. It's a big topic. So under visual effects, you have so many disciplines. I think what gets forgotten sometimes is that visual effects, you actually become quite specialized. So we have people who are focused on their job is water and fire. Their job is destruction. My job is backgrounds and environments. Somebody else is a compositor, or somebody else does concept art. Because I think for me, one of the most enjoyable parts of visual effects is that it's actually community, art by community, because we're all kind of producing work for a similar show, for a same agenda, and we're a group of people. And so, when you're a studio painter or it's so individual, but here you're getting to work as part of a pipeline. So I think what it takes to be a good visual effects artist is an interest in it, a want to do it, a willingness to learn new techniques and tools because it is constantly changing, and then actually knowing where you fit in the pipeline: an animator, an effects TD, a matte painter, a compositor.
Did you always have it in you, or is it something that school brought out?
No, visual effects for me came later in my life. So my origin story is of an oil painter. So my background is fine art. I don't say is or was, because I'm still always an oil painter first. I just don't have enough time to do it now. But my background was oil painting and drawing and sketching. I actually never owned a computer until I was maybe 30-something.
Really?
I hated computers.
All of it was on canvas, on paper.
Everything was canvas. Everything was oil on canvas. Everything was drawing. I also used to do murals. One of my things that I loved doing was murals, public art commissions. So luckily, when I was in the States, I got a commission for the city of Denver, for the African American Research Library in Denver. And I actually wanted to be a public art muralist. Like, I just wanted to do public art and all those kind of things. But it was really, really tough. And I think I was also very young, so I didn't know how to navigate that field very well. But somewhere along the way, it was in about 2000. This is when I met my husband, not husband now, but Philip, who was working in visual effects at the time at a place called Tippett Studios in San Francisco. And I was actually very broke. So as a painter, so I was painting for galleries in San Francisco, but then I was also painting commercially for a mural company. But it was feast or famine, and there was a lot of famine. So, but as along the way, Philip comes and says, "Hey, do you know they use matte painters? They use artists in film and visual effects." And it's like, what? What are you talking about? Because I had no clue. I didn't own a computer. You didn't need one. There was no internet. There was nothing. There was internet, but we weren't stuck as we are now. So after that, I thought, okay, let me try and figure out what this thing is and how do I fit in it and how do I get into it. So that's when I went on the journey of how to learn how to become a matte painter.
What inspired you get into the art space?
I was broke. No,
but you went to school.
Yes. So just let me read it. I've always wanted to do art, but when I finished 844, finished my fourth form, I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to do art. Actually, I have to own up. I actually wanted to be an anthropologist and an archaeologist, because in my mind, I wanted to be like Liki. I wanted to go sit in Turkana and dust.
Yeah,
that's what I wanted to do.
Okay.
But then I was told a very stern no by my dad.
Okay.
And then I thought, oh, the next best thing is painting. So anyway, but my folks were really supportive. My mom always pushed for art. So I was lucky enough to do my undergrad in oil painting in San Francisco. I finished, and then I went into murals, and I went into, because also when you finish as a painter, if you're not, I did get into some galleries, but the shows were, you have to work up to shows. It's plane pass. You have to work up into shows, and it takes a while, and in the beginning it's really tough. So at that time I was working in a coffee shop at the same time. So that was, as a student, just finished school, you're surviving. And then the murals, my heart was really, really into murals. And I loved Diego Rivera and Frida Kahlo. And living in San Francisco at the time, I was lucky enough to be there. And the Mission District was full of murals. So that was like, I want to do this. But then, of course, this is one thing I've always taken from those times. You have to be adaptable. An opportunity, and I was made aware of this other place I could also fit into. And I actually started to find it quite interesting, So when I started learning what matte painting was, I became quite inspired to go down that direction. So to be honest, it took me 3 years of self-teaching and self-learning to finally get into the door. So the funny thing about matte painting as a I guess a department or a thing in visual effects is the word is very misleading. It says matte painting, but we don't actually paint. Its background and its history, the history of matte painting is painting. They would paint on glass, and that would be projected, and then it transformed into the computer. So by the time I came into it, it was already computerized. It was already, so the primary tools are Photoshop, Maya, Nuke. But these things, so you tend to be a collager. You're collaging in Photoshop for film, right? So you're painting in a different way. Your palette has slightly transformed. So then I got into, I was lucky enough, the gods were on my side. Plus I put in a lot of hard work, and I had a lot of rejections. I had my stack. I used to keep them. I had the stack of rejections from all the places I had applied
you kept
to.
count of everyone.
I just kept. It was inspiration. You're just watching it rise. But to be honest, then I find the first job I got was at ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, in San Francisco. And to be honest,
how old are you at this point?
How old am I? How old am I? 28, 29.
Right. And how long had you been in the industry by then?
Of visual effects?
Yes.
I just
as an artist.
As an artist, I'd been since 8 years old, right? And I finished school when I was so bad at dates and numbers. I think I finished college in 92. Is that right? Something like that. Yeah. 92 or 96. I can't figure it out.
Your 20s at that time.
I'm in my 20s.
Okay.
So I've been doing this for 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah. I was in my late 20s.
Yeah.
Let me know.
Yeah.
Okay. No, so by the time I got into ILM, the beauty of it is ILM as a company, Industrial Light and Magic, had probably the lineage and the best history around matte painting. So I landed in the best place I could have wanted. Because at that time when I was getting into this work, it wasn't like now you go online, you Google what is matte painting, there are all these tutorials. There was nothing.
There was nothing.
There was one book, and there was a book called The Invisible Art. And I read that book from front to back. It's like the history of matte painting.
Amazing.
And so I taught myself everything. But then luckily when I went for the interview, actually, I'm going to take 2 steps back. The reason I was able to get the interview for ILM was I was lucky enough to meet somebody who set me on the right course. Because initially, when I was trying to transition into the industry, I was painting on the computer. And the first thing this young man said to me was, Christian Scherer said, do not paint. It's not painting anymore. You have to, and then these are the 5 things you have to work on. Make your portfolio look like this, and they'll start looking at you. So he gave me like the secret sauce. And so that's when I realized how, if you want something, you have to cater your portfolio very much to the path that you want to take. So if you're going for something that's matte painting, that's environments and backgrounds, you can't have a portfolio of portraits. Makes no sense. So when I got to have the interview at ILM, there was Jonathan Hub and Susumu and some really great mad painters. But the beauty of ILM is they had their apprenticeship idea and thinking, and that's how they built their studio or built the department. So I entered the right place, a place where I was willing to teach you if you had the ambition, if you had the want, and if you had the basic knowledge. Then they take you on your way. So I spent a year there at ILM. And then my first movie was Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. And I was sitting there and I was like, pinch! Is this really happening? Granted, I was doing small things, you know, but it didn't matter. I was like, my name's going to be on that credit. And that was 20 years ago.
Amazing. Amazing. They say it's not really about the software that you use. It's really about the techniques. Do you agree?
Yes, but I think it is. I would say you have to have an understanding of the software, but more importantly, you have to understand concepts around the things you're doing, if that makes sense, because every single company you work at uses a different proprietary software. So you can be a master of Maya, for example, and then you go to X company and they're working in a completely different proprietary software. So the ability, the power, superpower you need is to be adaptable, is to take something, reason, and apply it. So I think the more useful thing to have is the ability to reason, to apply, to adapt, to go, okay, this tool works like this on this one, and how is it working? Okay, I'll use it for this. So it's not, software matters, it does. You have to have a base skill. But I think, again, this is art and science, and that's what I like about the visual effects industry. You're mixing two sides. So you have to have aesthetics, but you also have to have a bit of a technical mind. So it's this place to mix, and then you have to be willing to learn and see what you need something for. I would say I'm not the most like crazy technical person. I learn what I need for the job that I need to do. I don't learn extra stuff. I'm not one of those people who learn how to do something about this and I'll never use it. That's not, for me, it's like, does it satisfy getting the shot out? Then I'll learn it. And then I'll try and learn it well. So,
now I want us to talk about the projects. You've just spoken about Star Wars. Just going through your profile and looking at some of the works that you've worked on is quite mind-blowing. Kindly talk about them.
I think, thank you. And then I'll say I've been really fortunate. Thank the gods and the stars every day. So my track record of visual effects, I started off, as I said, at ILM Industrial Light and Magic. There I worked on Star Wars. The nature of the visual effects industry in the early, when you're a beginner, you tend to have to move a lot. It's twofold. It's first the contract, they don't keep you for long periods. Or it's also a way to move up the ranks and get better pay. So it was a bit of a technique. So you move to the next studio and the next studio, and you get the experience, learn all these different ways of working from different studios. So from ILM, then we moved to actually Australia, to Sydney. And so I went to work on Happy Feet. So was in Australia for two years. And then from Australia, the big move was across to New Zealand. And it was quite deliberate wanting to work at Weta Digital, because Weta is kind of like, now it's called Weta FX, I believe. And so now that was like the best place, another good place to land. You know, it was 8 years at Weta. I got to work on Apes. I got to work on The Hobbit. I think 2 of the Hobbits. I got to work on Day and Night. I got to work on the other big ones, Avatar, which was that was the big highlight. 2009 was a big one. Because also we got the visual effects award for outstanding matte painting in a photoreal feature. It's such a long title, I never get it right. But the beauty of that was actually the last matte painting category ever awarded for under Visual Effects Society. After that, they transformed it to environments. So I was like, oh, we got the last one that said matte painting. It kind of means something to me that it's still matte painting. But anyway, so at Weta, I was head of department, and I was there for 8 years. And then at that point, we decided, you know what, New Zealand was fantastic. The learning was absolutely amazing. I think one of the things about Weta is it's one of the best in the world. And it's because of the level that they push you to. It's like you think you're done at version 50. You're not. You're still going. So it was a place where, again, you're learning. Everything I've done in terms of visual effects is learning on the job. And I've been fortunate to learn in the best places. It's like landing in Harvard or Princeton of the industry, you know? So you're like, and you're immersed in such skill and such talent. It's like every time you turn around, there's someone smarter and brighter and more innovative and this, and you can't help but like want to absorb and learn. So from IKWETA, then we moved up to Vancouver, because also that's also how the industry moves, and it was just time to kind of come back north. New Zealand is far south, and at New Zealand I was at Scanline VFX in Vancouver, which I worked on San Andreas, Lord of the Game of Thrones. I'm so bad with all my,
because you've worked on a lot, I guess.
I feel I don't want to sound arrogant, but I've worked on so many, I've forgotten many. But they're pivotal ones, and they're ones I'm really proud of. I was really proud of the work I did on San Andreas. I mean, granted, it's The Rock and it's stuff blowing up constantly, and I wouldn't say it's like this big meaningful heart movie, but I was really proud of the opening sequence because I got to recreate the Hoover Dam sequence, and that one for me, matte painting is supposed to be an invisible art. That's what its claim to fame is, and for me, I feel like my opening shot for San Andreas was that, so I feel quite proud of that one.
I'm actually going to ask you, are there any particular favorite projects that you actually worked on?
So
why?
It would be San Andreas because first of all, I was given that whole sequence as an environment to do it. I got to lead how I wanted to do it on that one. I'm really proud of it, of how it turned out. And then I would say Avatar was a highlight, the first Avatar, because also it was new, it was a big deal, it was a pretty amazing movie. What else would be something I was really proud of? Something really small, but Night and Day, which is the one with Cameron Diaz and I don't know who else. Tom Cruise, thank you. And there was just one sequence. It was me and Jean-Luc, who is the compositor. And we literally did the whole sequence ourselves.
Love it.
And I loved it because it was just like a nice bubble of efficiency and doing really good work. Should I ask Nancy to pause the water?
No,
it's okay. The background noise is okay.
It's okay.
Okay. So what else is something I'm really proud of? I also now later, so after Vancouver, we returned to Nairobi. And I've continued to work remotely, and I've done a lot more concept art now. So I think,
which is something I was going to ask you, because you had the opportunity to work abroad in some of the most amazing companies. Why did you decide to come back home, and why was it important for you to be here?
I got tired of seeing you guys on pictures in the sun having fun. No,
you're freezing in the cold.
I'm like, look here, folks are in the coast, so folks are in the bush, folks are here. No, the main focus, truthfully, is my parents. I'm fortunate enough to still have my parents who are both still alive. They're elderly. So that was a big pull. Like, I'd been away for 28 years. And honestly, it's so funny because everywhere I lived in the world, I never threw away my packing boxes. I always had a store with boxes.
Just in case you get to move.
Just in case we're coming home. And I was like, I need to stop having a cupboard of boxes. Either we're going or we're not going. So first fold was for folks, wanting to be home with folks. Second was wanted to do something. I've been so lucky, and I've had all this wealth of knowledge, experience. It's really fortunate experiences. And I think I want to come and do something here. I want to come and share the opportunity and build something here in Nairobi and be part of Nairobi. And also, to be honest, this place is invigorating and it's different. You know, a lot of people, it makes me sad sometimes when a lot of people will say, we want to go, we want to leave. And granted, everyone wants to leave. But trust me, when you leave, you realize how many special things there are actually here and opportunities. You know, it's very hard to imagine building something out there. It's somehow possible here. And those are what we're hoping to really get into, is how to build or develop this visual effects work here in Nairobi.
All right. Let's talk about your journey as an entrepreneur here in Africa. What did you learn? And what are you bringing home to be able to put Africa in the map, Kenya in the map?
Kenya in the map.
Yeah.
I would say it's been a lot of learnings. Also because from a personal point of view, going from a employee desk person, artist, to suddenly now saying, no, we want to put the whole package together. So there's been a lot to learn in terms of, first of all, what is it that you're trying to do? Defining that. I think everyone was like, what's the story? Telling your story? What's the story? So, just when you're confronted with suddenly making pitch decks and going, how does, and you do something, you think it's fantastic. And then they go, no, where's the money and where's the business? And so it's been learning to wear the different hats has been quite a learning experience. There's a lot of resources here. There's a lot of people doing similar things. We have a lot of entrepreneurs, and it's actually quite invigorating. And actually, you feel if you're not an entrepreneur, you're doing something wrong. Like, hey, I'm being left behind. What's happening? I think, what else have I learned? I've learned that in this space where something doesn't really exist, and I don't want to use the word that it doesn't exist. People have interest. People are doing their level of visual effects. I'm saying what we're not doing is doing it as an industry. There's no ecosystem around visual effects to do the service for these bigger films or for pitching that we can do it. So I think there's a lot of room to grow this idea. I think one of the biggest things when I first arrived was everyone I was speaking to, all the conversations were animation. And I don't mean it in a bad way. I say animation is a department in visual effects. But if we only label what we can do as animation, we're limiting ourselves. We're so limiting. And I always use the reasoning of, if you told me it's animation we have to do, I would have never done this work because I'm not an animator. I'm not an animator by aesthetic or taste or interest. I like painting backgrounds. So I feel like we have to be careful. In the beginning, when I was explaining myself, I kept coming up to this wall of animation, and I'm like, no, expand it, please. Can we expand it? Can we expand it to all these other things? And then can we also see this whole level of industry that we're not, I don't know if the right word is, we're not servicing or supplying to, every Netflix, half of the Netflix shows we're watching have visual effects. Hulu, HBO, so much work out there around visual effects. I mean, it's from the simplest thing to the explosion and the blowing up of New York City. There's like the whole range. It can be as simple as, director didn't like this light in our conversation, remove the light. That is a visual effect.
Very
shot.
true.
So there's a whole market to explore. There's a whole market to go after. And so I think, but one of the biggest things, so as IKWETA Arts as a company, when we first started doing this, we chewed it big. We came back as diaspora. You come with your big horse and you ride into town, and you're like, everyone's going to drop a red carpet for me, and it's going to be fantastic, and it's just going to happen like this, right? It'll be done in a year. We're sitting here now 5 years later, still kind of in the very early stages. But also one of the things that I took away from it and had to learn from it is make it bite sizes. So as a company, we decided, okay, we're going to work on 3 levels. What are the 3 levels? Building awareness, because there's definitely a communication language thing that needs to be explained. What is it? What is this thing we're going after? So building awareness. Second thing we want to go into is now training, because one of the biggest observations or situations is the lack of the technical skill sets, not artistic, not will, not ambition, none of that. It's the technical. And then the third part is now a studio that is got the security clearance, that has got the infrastructure, that has got the pipeline to handle work that you want to go after. So we thought, okay, let us separate things a little bit, make things a little bit more breathable, as in terms of how do we go after this. So in light of that first level of building awareness was IKWETA Arts, through the support of the French government Creation Africa project, we were awarded a grant to now do Visage. Visage is our first visual effects conference that is being hosted April 5th and 6th in Nairobi.
Which we are attending.
Which these guys,
we are all attending.
So anyone who please come, I'm very excited about it. I go through moments of like freaking out and then being really excited at the same time. But I think it's a really special thing. And the beauty is the people, I knew we're onto something good, because when we sent out the invitations for folks to come to talk, and the whole mandate is to share knowledge, is to talk up, just have 2 days talking about visual effects. Let's just geek out for 2 days. Let's open our minds. Let's get inspired. But everyone we invited said yes, almost like on the first ask.
Awesome.
And I was like, then there must be something we're doing right?
Sure.
And the beauty of it, I have to plug it. We have some superstars coming. You know, it's like Chris White is just won the Visual Effects Award for NIAD for the work they did on the movie Naiad for Water.
Amazing.
Then we have Andrew Roberts, he's an Academy nominee for The Creator.
Yeah.
And he's coming. And
Amazing.
even sometimes I'm sitting there going, I'm like, so they're coming to my thing. I'm going to sit in the front row and I'm going to listen to everything. Because there's still, even for me, so much to learn.
Yeah.
Because even as the industry, where we are in industry right now, it's in a point of transition again.
Yes.
I think every 10 years or whatever, there's a big shift in the universe.
Yeah.
And then in terms of now next steps of training. So hopefully we're hoping as we lay these things out, there is a little bit of the ball in the moss and we start to catch it as we go down the hill.
Yeah.
And one thing will lead to another. So we're talking to different people about figuring out how do we now set up this training.
Yes.
But for me, it's really, really important. I'm kind of basing it on myself, and I'm using myself as the sample as such. I didn't learn any of this in school. Yeah. So this is not about creating a school. This is about learning in production. It's a bit more vocational. It's a bit more on-the-job training, right? That kind of approach. So even when we set up this training facility or this training, it's geared towards how will we make a living from this? You know, I think one of the things that we have to be careful in Nairobi is we're quite exhausted with workshops and conferences, and people want day jobs. If someone's starting to go down this visual effects path, please, can you make a living from this? Please, can you empower yourself, your family, and enjoy doing art and making a living from it?
There's a lot of information that's already out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to be honest, if you want to learn a tool, go online, type how to learn Maya, you can learn it.
Yeah.
But it's a very different thing to work on a show, on a production, and build your skill sets like that.
Yeah.
So that's the idea around the training that we want to get into.
Yeah.
It's the word functional, or is it? It's pointed. It's for work. It's for building an ecosystem. It's for building a future.
Is the idea to be able to do certain projects while you're training them?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Of course, there's a small window where we have to build trust, right, through portfolio. So there's a small window of time where we'll have to just specifically make up projects, make up stuff amongst ourselves. Yes. But they're very directed to, I can sit there and write you what the industry likes to see. You know, like, so I take that, going back to my advice 20 years ago from Christian, paint these 5 things. He told me, paint destruction, paint night and day, paint an extreme angle, paint a fantastical thing, and paint a destruction shot. I did those 5 things and I got a job. Yeah. So it's almost like once we get into the training part, let's work on a destruction shot, because that's what visual effects is used for. Let's work on augmentation, day for night. You know, so they're very specific things. Instead of let's do the bouncing ball, or let's do another tutorial that doesn't apply to this. You know, so that's a hope, that's a prayer, that's the effort. We're working on that as we're doing. Where we have a few interesting people to speak to. Amazing. It'll take time. It's not like it's here now, because one of the biggest hurdles, and you guys know this, is the barrier to entry is the equipment. It's infrastructure. Yeah. The reason we don't have a fully functioning studio with securities and work coming in is it's expensive.
Very expensive.
And I'm sitting there trying to work out, wearing the hat of, now I put on accounting budgeting hat. And those are the worst days. Yeah. I make those are the one specific day of doing spreadsheets. And I'm like, oh, I hate this. But it's very necessary. Yeah. But when you start doing that, you start going, wow, look at these numbers going up and up and up. But there's also so much opportunity to gain, and so much opportunity we have lost because we're not ready for it. Yeah. We have all these cases we can look at. We can look at India. We can look at South Korea. We can look at even Vancouver. Granted, everyone's working in slightly different ecosystems and different, but you can see a similar, you just have to grow it. You have to start somewhere. You honestly just have to start somewhere with somebody trusting the process. I think, and you know about like the invention studios coming. There are opportunities coming. Yes. And today, did I just read? Oh, I'm going to say it and have forgotten what I read. Yeah. It's Paramount and somebody else. Paramount and, oh my goodness, there's one of the
big studios,
big studios, higher than studio. I think more of the distributor who have just signed to now open to Africa again for content. Oh, I hate this. I read and then I forget. I forget details.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is there's a certain shift in timing now. Like there's something about timing now.
We are getting the attention that we've actually been waiting for all these years.
And we have it coming from government. We have it coming from private. We have it coming from all the spaces. We have to be ready because but you have to allow us the time and the opportunity and the hand to get there, right? We're not going to be ready unless we put some work in.
But what do we need to be able to do? Because this is an opportunity that might never come.
Yeah.
We need to be able to show them that we are ready. The talent is not lacking. It's actually there.
Yeah.
So what do we need to be able to do to ensure that we don't lose out on this opportunity that's being given to us right now?
We have to get the technical skills. We have to build the infrastructure. We have to build the pipeline. Heaven forbid you tell the client we couldn't get it out because we didn't have this, we didn't have this. No, stuff must be working.
Yeah.
Because at that level, you do not fail. You do not have excuses. The dog did not eat your homework. No. At that level, not possible.
Yeah.
So we have to be ready on a technical level. One of the things I feel like we in Kenya need to really work on, soft skills, client-facing stuff, how to take critique, how to come back to your desk and address notes that you were given.
Yeah.
I've worked with a few people here already, and people think after version 1 they're done. And it's like, guys, that red is not the red that the client wanted.
Yes.
Can you see the red? There are 2 different reds.
Yes.
I've just had that on a level of business cards, and I'm just like, there are 2 business cards and they look different. Why?
Yes.
So it's these little attentions to details, things that people might brush off as they don't matter, but they actually do matter when you're chasing excellence.
And I love that you're talking about critique, because I think as creatives, what we put out to think is it. Yeah. How have you been able to take positively to critique over the years to be able to better yourself?
I had to build some really thick skin. And I think the place that built my resilience to critique was WETA. Oh my gosh, you would go in there and you would be critiqued. But it's not done on a personal level. And but as an artist, and you think, I've done this, you've worked many hours in the night or overtime to get this done. Yeah. You put it in for a daily's review and the notes just start coming. They just start coming. And there's somebody there typing and you can hear them typing and you're like, you seriously typing all this?
Yeah.
And so, but then you have to have a level of humility. You have to have a level of applying how am I going to address it? If somebody says, that's not the right purple, but doesn't give you much more information than that, you come back to your desk and you go, what purple? I mean, what are they talking about?
Yeah.
And then you have to reason, and then you have to. So one of the things I would say, because I do work that's representational, how you process critique and how you learn from it is go back to nature. Go back to the thing that you're trying to mimic.
Yeah.
All the lessons are around us. There's a 15-minute rule. If you can't figure it out in 15 minutes, go ask for help. So this thing of sitting at your desk endlessly, not asking for help, no, ask for help. That's where the humility comes.
Yeah.
And I always, sometimes I sound like an old lady school teacher, but if somebody I'm working with doesn't have a notebook and a pen, I always look at them like, this one's going to ask me the same question 5 days in a row.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's a certain level of ask a question, take some notes, reference back, try, don't just keep, it's a fine line between ask for help and then become very dependent on not thinking, right? So there's building a thick skin for critique and knowing what to do with it takes time, takes learning, but also a willingness to say, I actually don't know.
Yeah.
Let me learn. Then the other part to it is it your work or is it their work? Is it work for hire or is it your passion project? Those are 2 very separate things.
Yeah.
So also that's why I've always painted, and it's my space. In my painting, in my oil painting space, I'm not listening to any of it. It's my purple, know. But when I come and I know I'm doing a work for hire,
client,
it's for client.
Yes.
And some things you agree, some things you disagree. But even in the ones that you disagree with, there's something to learn, So constantly use it to better yourself. So I think those are some of the things we have to learn to do in general, because we don't have art in school. We don't have critical sit and discussions around let's put up our paintings and talk.
Yes, yes.
We don't do that, right? We don't have those moments.
Yeah.
So
and especially in Africa, where we're still yet to be able to adapt or even accept some of these careers, it's a bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
And I love that for you growing up, you had that kind of a support. And maybe being in the industry right now is going to be able to open up the minds of the many parents who are very artistic children, but don't quite have an example to look at and say, this has actually been successful.
Yes.
You know, and maybe asking that for, you mentioned about how you had the opportunity to be able to put your works out there. There's a young man, there's a young girl who's very artistic. What advice would you give them to be able to have their work seen by some of the studios?
You know, it's interesting. I just had that same scenario that you described happen, because what I find is a lot of parents will say, "Oh, you do that creative industries thing, you do that thing,"
and they don't take it seriously.
You know, would you talk to my children? Would you talk? Actually, I had somebody ask me to speak to their children because they're worried they're just going to pack up and leave because they're not seeing opportunities. But again, you're in the creative industries. I don't really understand what my child is telling me and this. So I had this, and you could hear this guy has done animation, he studied, he has ideas of what he wants to do. But there is a disconnect with our generation. My generation already as parents, like have a kid and are now the older ones, right? There's a little disconnect. Even my dad still today is like, what do you do? And I'm like, Dad, you see it.
I laugh at that because I think everybody in the creative space has
the
some,
same. Yeah. And even some now, even with these new creative spaces, I think I'm still going like, what's that blockchain thing again? But what advice I gave him also was like, first of all, you have to figure out what it is that you do want to do. You have to be willing to chase it at all costs if that's what you really want to do. You're going to have a lot of naysayers around you, and you're going to have to navigate that. If it's really what you really want to do. I think also be willing to ask a lot of questions. Right now, the thing in the universe is there's so much information. There's almost too much information, and it's quite hard to filter. So I would say you have to find like-minded people. You have to I know the whole AI, I don't want to jump into that conversation too deeply because it's like sinkhole. But AI is a tool, but it's also this new space that can also prevent us from doing our own self-exploration and our own discovery. And sitting there typing a prompt to get an image is all well and good if you know what to do with the image. So I think I always go back to, if you want to go into film and visual effects, and let's say you've done animation, and this guy asked me, what should I do next? I said, actually, go learn how to be a cinematographer. Go learn how to learn about light. Go learn, because one thing you have to remember about visual effects and film, it's about what the camera sees. So you have to expand your knowledge. Yes, I know my tools around animation. I'm a very good animator. But can you tell story? Can you use your camera to explain this, to get an emotional response? So there's so much learning to do. I would say even sometimes the not so obvious path, look to the side a little bit, maybe go do figure drawing for a few months, go do color and light, go do, but I think really learn what camera and story does. Take a story writing class, if just to open your mind. And then you can start to go. I sometimes think a lot of young people will say, I want to be a director. You're going to have to earn director. It takes time. Some of those, I want to be a concept artist. It takes time
for you to get
those that. Those are the cream of the crop jobs. So take time to get there and enjoy the journey. It's that's what we're here for, to enjoy this process, to enjoy this journey. You can't just arrive and say you're there.
Awesome. What are some of the challenges that you've come across so far?
Challenges. In which regard? We're talking in terms of setting up the studio, the space.
Here, especially in Africa, yes.
Actually, small challenges, I think I would say, is just attention to detail. I guess I'm very type A. I need things in order and a certain level of speed and that kind of stuff. I think a challenge on a personal level, having been away for so long, sometimes I was sitting after the first 2 years of reflection and thinking, what are all the differences? It's a place it's a place you grew up, but it's not a place you functioned as an adult. So I think as a diaspora person coming back, there's a lot of self-adjusting I've had to do around like expectation, speed, just systems.
But don't you think that's what you actually need for you to be able to put the industry in where it's supposed to be?
Yeah, we need all those things.
Yeah.
So, but it's an interesting one because it's a fine line to figure out how will we get there. And I don't want to say fix or correct, because there's also a lot of good things I've learned from not being so much on the clock. You know, there's also a freedom and a easier going space. I don't know if it's making a lot of sense, but there's a good and there's bad. But definitely, if we're going to be working for an international market, we're going to have to pay attention to clock. We're going to have to pay attention to detail. We're going to have to pay attention to quality. We're going to have to pay attention to many things if we want to be seen at that same level of excellence. So those have been quite some challenges on small levels, you know, and the small different things that we've tried. But I'm not losing hope. And I think it's something we all learn. We can all get better at. Challenge has just been trying to just get the wording and the language out. But I'm feeling so much more confident. That was more of a personal, I think a good way to answer that is I've been doing something at a certain level and of a very specific thing for so long, I'm a specialist. So even as for Visage, we have a series of webcasts. And I realized one of the things we had to learn to readjust, even in our interviewing and in our presentation of the webcast, was not speaking to specialists, speaking to everybody. So messaging and language and communication. So there was also a level of communication I had to learn and had to adjust to and speak so that people understand and can see where you're going with it. So I think that's a danger sometimes when you're so specialized in something, you almost can't communicate effectively and efficiently. But you know, I'll say the challenges are there, all kinds of normal challenges. One of the hardest things trying to do work here, people don't pay. People don't pay on time. It seems like there's a lot of expectation of, I want you to do this. There's a lot of big, but nothing, you know? So there's a lot of, I want this done. And then you, as the artist, are fighting for your money or chasing for your money all the time. And you're putting all your resources into chasing what is actually you have earned. There seems to be still this barrier of paying artists for the work that they've actually done.
Is it different abroad?
I think I mean, if you're working for a job, you send your invoice in, they pay you in 2 weeks. You're not chasing for 2 months, or someone tells you it's coming, or someone forgot to sign, or I don't know what. There is a lot more around. There's a lot more structure. I've never had to chase a payment from outside. I've had to chase payments from inside, you know, and it's discouraging and it's exhausting. And then you go, why should I bother? You know? So I think that needs to change in how they treat creatives. I think one of the challenges I feel with this whole creative industry bubble we've all been put in, granted, it's fantastic. We have a bubble. I feel like they're slightly, maybe not asking enough stakeholders from our space to come and sit at those tables to talk about this bubble that we're all living in. I feel like we've put a lot of things into one space that were so specialized, even from the things that comics and graphic novels are so very different. We have things that cross-pollinate across, but we are quite different paths, and how you would market, how you would, you know, but then we crisscross. It's very hard to say, for lack of a better way of putting it. I feel like don't take, say, the agriculture world or the call center model or the banking model and put it on creative industries. It doesn't work like that. You know, when they talk about we need impact, you need to create a project that will give impact of 1,000 people. It's not going to happen. It can happen in time. It can happen because we're in the business of thought, of creating beautiful things that can telling stories that can start small. One person can change 1 million people's lives, right? With one story. You know, we can look at, we all know movies, we can close our eyes and go, wow, that made such a difference in my life. Or look at what it's done and how it's traveled around the world. So our power is from the small to the big, but it takes time.
It takes time.
So, but when you come onto us and say, make it big in the middle. It's like, it's not possible. It doesn't work like that. We don't fire in the same kind of way. So I think the challenge has been trying to share the vision, explain the vision, but not fall into this criteria that they keep putting us in as creatives, you know, and we've been here since forever. It's not like it's something new. And if you look at any city, why do you go to Paris? You go to Paris to look at museums. You go for art, you go for culture. And so it's like we're super, super valuable resource, but it needs to be handled in a slightly different way.
And do you think that's the same thing for Africa as well, to eventually get there with time?
I think we have the same potential. We already have it in other things, maybe not this specific thing. I think we have amazing stories. The danger for me is that the stories become watered down or they become diluted to suit taste of another market that we're always trying to appease and sell into, which is hard. It's like we're only validated if it's picked up by Netflix. It's only validated if it's picked up by Hulu or wherever. It's not validated if your own local market's enjoying it. I think Nigeria is fantastic. You know, I think they've made something that they're really enjoying. That's theirs.
And it's very true. Made by them for the market.
And they're loving and enjoying, and people are making good livings from that. They don't need validation. In fact, now it's funny, it's the West coming to pick up their stuff, right? So I think we have to be quite strong in holding our power and not needing the validation always from outside. But how do we measure success? Oh, it was picked up by so-and-so. It was picked up by so-and-so. So it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one. Because you do need that traction. You do need that financing. You do need it to enter the next one. But I think we have the same opportunities. The amazing thing that we have, to me, is that we can leapfrog sections of time because we have things to reference back to. So if we're aware enough about it, we can go, hey, they did it like this, but that didn't quite work. Okay, we won't do it like that. We can jump, you know? And I think also there's been a lot of democratizing things around technology. There's an Unreal Engine now, which can change a lot if you know how you want to use the tool. You have, granted, some of the AI stuff, if you know how to use the tool. There's platforms, there's internet, there's YouTube. You can self-publish, you can do. So there are all these places, but it still needs knowledge and a North Star, right? What are you trying to do with this? And stay on
And
it.
as you're trying to do what it is that you're doing, even for you as a company, who are you creating for?
Ourselves.
Yourselves.
Me. I want to look at something nice and be proud. You know, and I think that's for me is like, I want to, you know how you look at your portfolio and you go, that one was so good to work on. I learned so much on that moment. I'm really proud of it. And I'm happy to put it on the wall. You know, you're only as good as your last painting, right? And so you keep chasing the next image.
Okay.
So
having learned what it is that you've learned over the years, what would you tell your younger self?
What would I tell my younger self?
And especially when you're getting into the space.
Be more confident and go for things a bit more boldly. You know, I think there are many times, and I always think about this because it keeps happening sometimes, or at moments. Do you know that thing where they say when a man gets a job, even if he's not qualified, he'll still say yes and go for it. And women
learn while doing it.
Learn while doing it. Women, you go, I don't have this. I don't have this. I don't have this. I don't think I'm ready for the job. And so there have been moments like that where I've actually said, I'm not ready. And I wish I jumped. I wish somebody just gave me a small nudge and I went off the cliff at that time and landed. So I think that I wish I would have told my younger self to be a bit braver, take some of those moments when you had them, push through some of those things and maybe have gone slightly more, I don't want to say faster, just maybe expanded more on stuff. So I'd say take more chances, be braver, trust a bit more. It's worked out well, you know, but there's been a lot of, you have anxious moments. And granted, I've always felt I've made the right choices. I feel like I have a spidey sense about knowing when I need to relearn something. And it's happening now again. And I'm like, I need to switch some tools and learn this. And so I think I've always been fortunate enough to be able to see the patterns around the industry. Doesn't make it less scary, but you just kind of go, okay, I need to act on this and get on with this. So I would say I wish I said yes to some of those jobs a bit more, like walked in like the guys and said, yes, I can do it, as opposed to hide back.
Yeah.
Because I referenced one moment where I think I was being offered a bit more of a supervisory role, and I kind of shied away a bit. I doubted myself. And so I wish I could tell younger person, don't doubt, try. And then ask for help if you get stuck.
Yeah. Awesome. Maybe as you finish, what are some of the projects that you're currently working on, and what should we expect from you as a company in the next 5 to 10 years?
Oof. You want to know my dreams?
Yes.
You want to know my currently, what am I working? I did some work on the Last Airbender that just came out. Is it Avatar Last Airbender?
Nice.
And then
and you don't shout about these things, Yvonne.
No, because I'm not. My goal is to build this thing here. I think that's where I've put my focus.
But don't you think that they actually need to know that talent is in Africa and you can actually outsource it from here?
But that's what we're working on. So the day I tell you, there are a few things we have in the pipeline that I'm hoping will lead to be able to say, and it happened. Guess what? We're sourcing from here. And we have, look in the room, we have 10 people working on the project. That when that moment happens, I will tell you, we did it. We did what I want to. I'm not trying to sound, righteous or all this, but I want to build something and say we did it and we made a difference and we empowered somebody. And all these projects are amazing and they're fun to work on and there's something to learn from it, but they're not ours. It's not mine, and to build IKWETA and to invite you in 5 years and say, check out this project we just did, look at this portfolio, and now meet so and so and so and so who are doing this, and now check out his personal portfolio or her personal portfolio, and things like that, so that's when I'll say, that one I'll be like shouting from the roof. That one I'll be, everyone will know
we have arrived.
We've arrived. And I think it's beautiful. It's making art is amazing, but you have to be proud of the art that you make and make a difference. It has to say something, So for 5 years, let's hope I am inviting you to come to the studio for tea. Let's redo this interview in 5 years. And say, and it won't be me talking. You'll be interviewing the people who are working here.
Love that.
Yeah. So let's do that.
Love that.
So
thank you so much for opening your home to us.
You're welcome, man.
Asante.
Asante.
Yeah.